And news coming in of how our forces were actually tracking very closely Sheikh Hasina's flight movement. Fighter aircraft from an eastern airbase were airborne soon after the Bangladeshi C-130 aircraft entered Indian airspace and then kept an eye on it for quite some time. The Indian Air Force, and sources are telling us that the Indian Air Force and Army were prepared to meet any contingency. This is expected, this is normal when our neighbour is plunged in this kind of a political crisis and the outgoing Prime Minister is moving over Indian airspace. It is expected that our forces will keep a close track of the flight's movement as well. Shiv fighter aircraft were airborne soon after their aircraft entered into Indian airspace. Like I said, largely protocol, expected really that our forces will very closely track the developments because of the crisis that Bangladesh has been plunged into.
Akshita, given what was going on in Bangladesh, given the abruptness with which Sheikh Hasina needed to get into a helicopter, then hop onto a plane and then make her way into India, I'm not surprised at all that the Indian Air Force had jets in the air. They had birds in the air because this was obviously an unfolding volatile situation where all possibilities needed to be taken into account. Remember, when a military aircraft especially travels from another country into India, or for that reason anywhere, lots of clearances need to be taken. Usually such transits require a great deal of clearances. It takes a bit of paperwork that doesn't happen in a few minutes. And therefore, this kind of unplanned dash by a sensitive individual, someone like a beleaguered Prime Minister, making a dash, really an escape from Bangladesh, to a safe haven like India, would have happened very quickly, giving the Air Force very little time to react. And the Air Force, after all, is a military. Acting quickly, reacting quickly, being prepared for all contingencies is precisely what it is trained for. And that's the reason why, as we're hearing, the Indian Air Force would have had a handful of fighter aircraft from some of its eastern air bases airborne, keeping an eye on the C-130. I imagine that the Indian Air Force would have had jets all through the transit route, all the way from once the aircraft entered Indian airspace until it landed in Hindon. The fighters wouldn't have been escorting Sheikh Hasina's plane, but they would have been in the same airspace, keeping an eye on the plane and making sure that everything went right.
Just on that, Shiv, the clarification that you gave about this not being an escort for Sheikh Hasina, this protocol is not followed to protect Sheikh Hasina in any way. This is being done because her flight was over Indian airspace, yes?
That is correct. A fighter escort for an aircraft, is a very high level of protocol. That's either, something that is ceremonial, or if there is an imminent and defined threat to an aircraft. In Indian airspace, there is no real perceived threat to an aircraft as such, like either a hijacking or any other kind of threat. So therefore, the protocol would have been, just to keep those birds in the air in case some kind of a contingency requires a fighter intervention. So that's the kind of protocol that would have been extended, not the kind of high-level escort you would normally see either ceremonially or tactically in many countries. India has provided fighter escorts for aircraft in the past, but these have largely been, ceremonial or operational in nature. This particular one would have just been to tick all the boxes and make sure everything went right.
Especially keeping in mind how last minute really these developments were. Like Shiv pointed out, there's usually a lot of paperwork involved in these kind of situations to have a leader fly over Indian airspace. Considering the situation that's currently in Bangladesh and the last minute chaos, this would have been a last minute approval also taken from Indian authorities, which is why that protocol was followed.